One last ride for the 2023 fantasy football season. It is another edition of the Stardom Cinem Show. Thank you so much for joining us all season long. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Marcus Grant. He is Michael F. Florio. He is the author of the Stardom Cinem column, which you can read at NFL.com/startsit. Do you feel any added pressure for championship week?
Yes. I told people to start Breece Hall. Great. I told people to sit Jerome Ford, and you could guess which one my mentions were talking about more.
Yeah, nobody says thank you for the ones that you get right, but they also let you know about all the ones that you get wrong. By the way, if you haven't seen, check out NFL Fantasy Live, where David Njoku has a special message for our own Adam Rank. That's all I'm going to say about it. Anyway, we got the top starts and sits of Week 17. We're going to tell you who's going to pile up the points, and Laquan Jones is going to stop by to help us give out some end-of-season awards. But let's dive right into this with your start-sit quarterbacks for Week 17. Who do you like?
Dak Prescott in what could be a score fest. Matthew Stafford has been red hot. Kyler Murray in a good matchup. And CJ Stroud is back, so he could be back for fantasy. The sits, Tua Tagovailoa. Trevor Lawrence is just beat up bad right now. Jacoby Brissett is on the injury report. Him or Sam Howell sit. And then Gardner Minshew, because the Raiders defense is revamped under Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, they look way better recently. So let's dive into some of these individually. Kyler Murray, I mean, hasn't been great. He looks like a guy who missed a good part of the season rehabbing an ACL injury. But the Eagles we have been picking on all season long, I don't know why we stop now.
Exactly. And Kyler did bounce back last week with 20 fantasy points, his third time in his last 5 games reaching that number. But like Marcus said, it's more about the matchup. The Eagles have allowed the 6th most passing yards per game this season, 2nd most passing touchdowns, most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. Plus, they generate pressure up front, which could mean we see a lot more tucking and running from Kyler Murray.
Yeah, we'll see how things go. I kind of like Rondale Moore as like a deep sleeper in this one, kind of for the same reasons there. You mentioned CJ Stroud is back after missing the last couple of games in concussion protocol. I feel like just telling people to start him is more of a reminder than any sort of actual like analysis kind of thing.
Yeah, I was originally going to talk up Russell Wilson, but something happened there where he's not playing anymore. So we go with CJ Stroud, who, like Marcus said, is back. So it's a reminder just to start him. The ceiling is so high. He still has the highest individual game of all quarterbacks this season, where he scored over 41 fantasy points. We saw the Texans be able to throw against the Titans a couple weeks ago with Case Keenum, who looked terrible last week. So I expect much better results for Stroud, especially with a healthy Nico Collins and a healthy Noah Brown there as well.
Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins offense, I mean, it's been the talk of the league most of the season. The weird part about that is that he has not played well against good defenses. This week, he's facing a good defense in the Baltimore Ravens, and so I assume that's why you say he's a sit.
It's partially why I say he's a sit. The other reason is because, well, Tua just has not been great for fantasy as of late. Since his last time topping 20 fantasy points was week 8. In the last month, he is giving you fewer than 13 fantasy points per game. Now he gets the Ravens. They're in the bottom 3 in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. They just shut down Brock Purdy and co there. And Jalen Waddle is out. Tyreek Hill is banged up, as is Raheem Mostert. So because of all his weapons being banged up, the fact that he hasn't been great for fantasy and it's a tough matchup, I think you play it safe and go with another option this week.
The way the Ravens shut down Brock Purdy and the 49ers last week would make me very concerned if I had Tua in a lineup this week. Those are the guys throwing the football. Let's take a look at some of the guys catching the football. Your start-sit receivers for the week.
Rashee Rice must start. I've been telling you to start T. Higgins for a couple weeks now. I'm not shying away in championship week. Brandon Ayuk and all of your 49ers must start options, as is Nico Collins. The sits, this one's spicy. We're going to talk about it. Stephon Diggs, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, and Joshua Palmer. If he suits up, it doesn't matter. Sit him.
Yeah, things are weird right now for the Chargers. We'll see what happens, especially with Keenan Allen this week. DNPs early in the week as he has that heel injury. Let's talk about Rashee Rice, though, because he really has been one of the bright spots in a Chiefs wide receiver room that has been underwhelming, to say the least. We keep waiting for the big breakout game by Patrick Mahomes. Does that mean Rashee Rice eats as well?
Yeah, I think this is the week that Mahomes gets right, and I think it leads to his top wide receiver and lately top target in Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice has 9 or more targets in 5 straight games. And for a while, we've been saying he brings a safe floor. He's good for like 11, 12 fantasy points per week. We're seeing a high ceiling to go with that as of late. So between the safe floor, the volume, the more upside we've been seeing, the great matchup because they've allowed the most yards to wide receivers since week 12. And I think Mahomes eats. That means you play Rashee Rice.
Yeah, Rashee Rice really maybe challenging Travis Kelce for the top target in the offense? Or maybe not. Stephon Diggs, very good receiver in a slump right now. He has been on the struggle bus, maybe even driving the struggle bus at this point. So you're saying to get away from him against the Patriots?
With a caveat. A lot of people have been tweeting me all week long, like, hey, I have this, like Puka Nacua versus Stephon Diggs, stuff like that. Go with your other really good option if you have Stephon Diggs. Don't sit Diggs for, say, George Pickens or Rashid Shaheed or someone like that. It always depends on your options. But Stephon Diggs, 7.9 fantasy points last week, less than 10 per game since week 10. I know he had a long touchdown catch that was an interception because it was underthrown, but this is a third straight year where December is the worst statistical month for Stephon Diggs. Now, he does have a history of success against the Patriots. He is Stephon Diggs. He's going to break out of this eventually. But again, if you have another solid option, that is where you get away from Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I mean, this is it really is nervous time for a lot of folks with Stephon Diggs because it's hard to make that decision, especially if you have two guys that are sort of similar. We are just getting started here. We're going to talk some running backs and tight ends coming up. Stick around for more of the Stardom Cinem Show. Time for some Week 17 Stardom Cinem running backs. Florio, go!
I don't care about the matchup. You have to start your Lions running backs. Jonathan Taylor is a volume play against the Raiders. Austin Eckler, hopefully we get an air guitar show this week. DeAndre Swift is a must-start running back this week, and I think Ty Chandler remains in play. Chuba Hubbard, if you have another option, I would try to get away from him. Khalil Herbert, it's a trap. And A.J. Dillon, I know he scored a touchdown last week, still at less than 8 fantasy points.
Yeah, man. A.J. Dillon, Quadzilla, I don't know, man. It's just frustrating. Let's talk about some of these guys individually, though, because Ty Chandler, I don't know if the takeover of the backfield is complete, but it's very much underway there in Minnesota.
Yeah, even with Madison last week, he played 65% of the snaps, and I know he only had 8 carries. That's because they were trailing the entire game pretty much, and they were playing in one of the tougher matchups for a running back. But now he's going to get a favorable matchup against the Packers, who've allowed the 6th most rushing yards to backs this season, the 9th most fantasy points per game, and it just could be a competitive game, especially with it being a rookie quarterback. Look for a lot of dump-offs, and I think they're going to try to establish the run early on in this one.
Yeah, I do think we see a lot of Ty Chandler in this one. Love him in this matchup. Khalil Herbert. I don't know about you. I want no parts of the Bears backfield, mostly because I have no idea what they're doing in the backfield right now.
Exactly. Last week was a big Herbert week. The week before was a big Roschon Johnson game. The week before that was a big Deontay Foreman game. It is a guessing game, and it is not one you should put your fantasy championship hopes on trying to guess right, especially in this matchup. I know Khalil Herbert went off last week, 112 yards, a touchdown, but it came against the Cardinals, who are the very best matchup for running backs. No team allows more fantasy points per game to the position. Now they play the Falcons, who have allowed 1 rushing touchdown to running backs all season and the 3rd fewest fantasy points per game. Again, it is a trap. Do not chase the points from last week. You missed out on them. You're not getting them this week.
It is really a true hot hand situation, and that's really a tough way to live. If you guess right, congrats to you. I don't want to have to be in that situation. Let's take a look at your start-sit tight ends for Week 17.
Sam Laporta, I know he's been up and down. There's too much upside to get away, though. Isaiah Likely, safe floor, high ceiling. And Darren Waller we'll talk about. I think it's time to get away from Dalton Kincaid, unfortunately. Tucker Kraft, if you're going deeper, he's in play, but I would ideally try to get away. Kyle Pitts, I'm done with the Falcons. And then, unfortunately, Taysom Hill.
That's where we are. He's just done with the Falcons now. I never thought we'd get there. Let's talk about Darren Waller, though, because we know Tommy DeVito to the bench. Tyrod Taylor is the starting quarterback. And I like Darren Waller at the start of the year. He obviously, unfortunately, got hurt at some point. I just think volume, if nothing else, sort of wins the day here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The Rams are a great matchup for tight ends. They've struggled against the position all year long. Right now, they are top 5 in yards, touchdowns, and fantasy points per game allowed to the position. They're top 5 in yards on the year and in the last month or so. And his best fantasy game of the year came in one of 3 games with Tyrod Taylor. His 4th best game was also in that 3-game span with Tyrod Taylor. So in a game where I think the Giants have to throw the ball a bunch, Darren Waller is in play. I told you he would win you fantasy championships this year. It's just not how we drew it up.
Not the way you thought it would happen, but it could happen nonetheless. Then you mentioned Taysom Hill is a sit this week. I keep saying, like, you can't really predict Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill just sort of happens, but I don't know if it's going to happen this week.
There was a stretch where we were like, he brings a very high ceiling, and it's starting to look like a safe floor as well. Then he missed that game, and it's just, there's no coming back, it seems like, for Taysom Hill. 0.2 fantasy points he scored last week. In his last 2 games, 1.7 fantasy points combined. 3 rushing attempts in those 2 games, 2 or fewer targets in each. He's not throwing the ball as much. They use 4 tight ends. It was a fun ride for Taysom Hill, but it is not one you should hitch your championship wagon to.
Yeah, it just, I think we always sort of knew it was going to end this way. There was just not a lot of consistency with Taysom Hill and that Saints offense pretty much all season long. We are not done. It is time to hand out some awards as we get to the end of the fantasy season. Laquan Jones will stop by to help us out with that when we come back on the Stardom Show. It's time for the Stardom Cinem Awards, a.k.a. the Starties, and to help us hand out some hardware at the end of the season here, Laquan Jones, who you can't tell by the looks of it, he's actually from New Jersey, despite the fact that everything he's wearing says California on it. But,
it's my second home.
Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, I guess I should say. So we each have 3 awards that we are giving out. You can do the math. That's 9 awards that we're going to hand out here. So please, LQ, you can start us off.
I mean, I'm not being a homer here, but I think it's facts. It's true. Kyren Williams is the fantasy MVP, man. At one point, this guy was on the waiver wire, a backup to Cam Akers, and thankfully, the Cam Akers and Sean McVay toxic relationship has come to an end, but he just showed up and showed out, and it's been a while since we've seen Todd Gurley-like numbers in the Rams offense, so Sean McVay's back to calling the plays, having fun. Nice touch adding Mike LaFleur to that office, and you got to look at this offense now and how it's running. I wasn't familiar with his game, obviously. I didn't know he was so explosive. I mean, this guy is just putting up historical numbers, man, and I think this opens up the conversation of him as a first-round pick next year, man.
Kyren Williams right now is his vote for the fantasy MVP. Florio, what is your first award you would like to hand out?
The Odell Beckham Jr. Award for a rookie wide receiver of a generation. Because go look back at what Odell did in 12 games his rookie year. No one will ever touch that rookie pace. But there's someone who's coming close this year. It is Puka Nacua, sticking with the Rams. Look, I know right now he's on pace to finish with just about a little bit more than what Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase did as rookies. The difference is we knew Jamar Chase for years before. He sat out his final year of college. He was that enshrined as a first-round pick. We knew who Justin Jefferson was. We were clowning the Eagles before Jefferson even stepped on the field for not picking him. No one in their right mind thought Puka Nacua was going to do this. I loved Puka Nacua in the summer. I would have settled for him being a wide receiver 3. He is a wide receiver 1. Even Puka Nacua himself was like, yeah, I was working on my blocking because I thought that was the only way I was going to get on the field. And yet, he is doing what he is doing. So the Odell Starty of the year goes to Puka Nacua.
I'm going to go with the Chicken and Waffles Award. 2 things that you maybe didn't think go together, but ended up being way better than you imagined. And while I don't have a current Ram, I have a former Ram, Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Because when Baker took over the starting job there in Tampa, we all had jokes, right? We were going to talk about the Baker Mayfield cycle about, plays bad, trash talks an inferior opponent, wins, so on and so forth. And a lot of us, I know Florio, looked at Mike Evans and said, well, his streak of 1,000 yards is probably going to end this year with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Wrong! That dude was almost to 1,000 yards by week 7. I mean, that's how good things were with Baker and Mike Evans.
You snooze, you lose, man, because Raheem Mostert, the season he's having, man, he has exploded on the scene. He was just chilling in those later rounds over the summer, man, just sleeping, with the expectations of Devon Achane and Jeff Wilson Jr. returning and stuff. But, he was just, hey, I'm here. I'm 31, but, we're good. I'm still here. Being explosive, man. This dude's top 3 in rushes of 10-plus yards. He's leading the league in touchdowns. What more can you say? This was the biggest wake-up call to the fantasy streets, man. And I think you opened the conversation earlier this week, Marcus, about where do you draft this guy next year?
Yeah, and I think, look, I think most people seem to have it right. Like, this is a guy who's probably going to go 4th round or so. He's going to be a year older. This is a guy who, before this year, did have a pretty extensive injury history. Devon Achane is still going to be there. It's still going to be an offense that's heavy with Tua and Tyreek. So I think what he did this year was nice. 21 touchdowns or however many he ends up with when the season's over.
This season?
It feels, I'm going to say it, he's not going to score 20-plus touchdowns next year. I'm going to go out on that limb. Florio, what is the next award you'd like to hand out?
The Kyle Pitts. Because if you remember back when Kyle Pitts was a prospect and then a rookie, all you heard about was, this is the generational tight end, the tight end rookie that is going to end the streak that you can't draft rookie tight ends. And he had a good rookie year. But you know what's having a great rookie year? Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta right now is a top 3 fantasy tight end. You hear all the time, oh, rookies can't be tight end ones. This guy easily, with Hawkinson hurt, he has to outscore Travis Kelce this week, and he will finish the fantasy season as the overall tight end 1. Tight end of a generation, all of that. I've already said on the podcast earlier this week that he is going to be in the conversation to be the first tight end off the board next year. I had him ranked as a tight end 1 coming into this season. He was one of my most drafted tight ends because you were able to get him in the double-digit rounds. And I'm sure you guys have him on plenty of teams. Those teams that have Sam Laporta, it's an immediate leg up on the rest of your team.
It's the Haley's Comet Award. It's the player who burned bright and then just disappeared from our lives. That would be Zach Moss, right? I didn't play week 1. He was hurt, had the broken arm, I believe it was. Jonathan Taylor was still trying to figure out his contract situation with the Colts. But when he came in week 2, just went bananas. In the first few weeks that he was on the field, Zach Moss was amazing. And even when Jonathan Taylor showed up, Moss was still putting up numbers. And eventually just kind of petered out. And even midway through the season, when Taylor got hurt again, we thought, well, hey, Zach Moss did great. Let's put him in the lineup. Nope. Didn't really work out, and now has really just disappeared. In fact, he has already been ruled out for week 17. Zach Moss was great early in the season, just sort of kind of faded away by the time it was all said and done. I don't even know what really to say about it other than...
You had to be there.
Yeah,
you just had to be there.
I think that's probably the perfect way to say it. You just had to be there. If you enjoyed that Zach Moss period of your life, look back on it with fondness. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened, and enjoy that in your fantasy roster. Meanwhile, LQ, this next award maybe not so nostalgic.
Man, oh man. Come on, bro. Sky Moore. What happened? The expectations for him this offseason were high, man. I mean, like, the offseason height, I bought into it along with other fantasy managers. We did not get the return that we were hoping for. But, like, his second year, we were expecting him to step up. You know, of all seasons, how the Chiefs are playing right now in that wide receiver room and what it is, we thought he was going to be able to step up and be at least the second or third option in this offense. But I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's he's running the wrong routes, the chemistry's off. No opportunity to get on the field, not being utilized properly in the offense. But whatever it is, man, it's just been bad. So I might be done with Sky Moore, man. This project might have to be set to an end.
All right, Florio, you have one more award you'd like to hand out.
Yeah, I've kind of celebrated players that I was high on the last 2, but part of this job is also eating crows. So the Turn My Headphones Up award goes to Rachaad White. Because volume wins out. All summer long, I kept saying, like, yes, I understand this guy's going to get a lot of volume early on. He is very inefficient, one of the most inefficient running backs in the league. He continued to be inefficient for much of this season. I mean, last week he averaged less than 2 yards per carry. But it didn't matter because he got so much volume. They started throwing him the ball like Baker Mayfield was Tom Brady, and that kind of flipped the switch. And around like week 6 or so, Rachaad White went from being a running back that was very disappointing to being one that was a potential league winner and a top 10 running back. So I will take the L on fading Rachaad White. And if you drafted him against what I said, kudos to you because it worked out in a big way.
The last award that we're handing out, it is the New York Times Sunday Crossword Award, a.k.a. You're not going to solve this one. Gabe Davis. And there were a lot of options here because I thought about George Pickens. He was kind of the runner-up for this award. But Gabe Davis is the guy that we most could not figure out this year. He was the cardio king of the week on Fantasy Live at least 4 times this season. The guy who just ran a whole lot and didn't have any production to show for it. He had multiple games with 0 points. These weren't games where he was hurt or inactive. These were games where he suited up and ran a lot of routes and just didn't provide anything statistically for the Bills or your fantasy team. I'm old enough to remember a couple of summers ago where he was like the flashpoint on fantasy Twitter, where you said all you had to do was just tweet the words Gabe Davis and you would start a fight about whether or not he was hashtag good or not. At this point, he is what he is. He is the quintessential better in best ball guy. If you are trying to start him on a week-to-week basis, Godspeed to you, because there are no analytics. There is no amount of game film watching that is going to give you any sort of clue as to when Gabe Davis is going to do things. And you're a Bills fan. You have no idea, do you?
Nope. And the thing is, I think for his second straight year, he's about to finish around where his ADP was. Mm-hmm. So if you just looked at the end of the year, you'd be like, oh, Gabe Davis, we haven't figured out. And then you look at week to week and you're like, this guy is the ultimate headache, the ultimate roller coaster.
It is time now for the Pile Up presented by Tide. When stains and odors pile up, it's got to be Tide. These are guys who we guarantee will get into Club Dub and score you at least 25 fantasy points. So this is a little one that people might kind of want, at least for the week. Laquan, who do you got this week?
It's been a while since I've been affiliated with a good cheesesteak, so we're rolling with DeAndre Swift, man, with probably the best matchup he has this season against this Cardinals defense, who are allowing the most rushing yards per game, and they're also top 5 in missed tackles on run plays. So he's being set up with a layup here, and the Eagles have been really leaning on him in back-to-back games. He's had 20 touches, so the volume's there and the production's been there. So I think he's set up for a good situation here, because it looks like the Eagles are leaning on him in the ground game on the back end of the season right now, and I know all the Philly fans are screaming like, yo, run the ball. So Swift has looked really good these past 2 weeks, so I think 25 points are definitely on the table for him to grab.
Here's the dirty little secret. They are running the ball. They're running it a lot, just maybe not as much as people want them to be. But they're one of the run-heavier offenses in the league over the last 3 weeks. Florio, you got a bounce-back guy as your club dub or club sud guy this week.
Brock Purdy. Because, look, I understand the vast majority of you out there who have Brock Purdy, like myself in the Fantasy Live League, you're playing for third place. But if you survived last week, like I am facing him in one of my championship games, I don't know how the other person survived what Brock gave him last week. But if you manage to get by and you're in a championship game, you don't stop starting him now. The Commanders, they are a team we've been picking on all year. They allow a bunch of production through the air, top 2 in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. And then the Niners are angry. Debo's going to eat. Ayuk is going to eat. Kittle will probably eat. We know CMC is going to get in on the fun. And the person who gets the points for all of those tied in is Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I love Brock Purdy. I love the whole Niners team to bounce back this week after kind of getting humbled last week. Hey, this is going to make you happy, though, because my guarantee is that Matthew Stafford falls out. And not just because I sat Joe Flacco to start Matthew Stafford in one of my championship leagues, but because Stafford has been on absolute fire. At least 2 touchdown passes for 6 straight games. He is as hot as anybody in the league. The Rams offense is as hot as any offense in the league. The Giants defense looks vulnerable. So I think Stafford keeps it rolling. That means you can start, obviously, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua. I like DeMarcus Robinson as a flex option this week. We already know that apparently Kyren Williams is the fantasy MVP, according to Laquan. So the Rams, they're going to ram it. The Ramily is going to enjoy the holidays. I have no other Ram puns for you.
That warms my heart.
There you go. And what we'll also do is set up a really interesting Week 18 showdown between the 49ers and the Rams. The Niners could need that game to try and lock up the number 1 seed in the NFC. The Rams, I don't know if they win this week. Do they lock up a playoff spot? I'm not sure.
Listen, they do, and they will, and we're gonna stomp you guys.
Okay, so then how about you just lock up the playoff spot? You lay down in Week 18. You let the Niners get the 1 seed in the bye, and everybody is happy this way.
Absolutely not.
Can we agree that it should be a week where both Puka and Kupp, hopefully, because it's always like kind of one or the other. I need both this week.
I'm fine with that.
All in.
I should check to see if my opponent has either one of those guys. But as of the moment, I'm cool with that. So
let's go.
So we'll leave it at that. This is our final Stardom Situm show of the season. And just want to thank all of you out there for watching and engaging with us all year long. Also want to thank all the specialists. And I don't have all the names, and so I don't want to try. But I appreciate all of you guys for helping us out with this so much. For Madison Sanders, who puts this show on, who does the heavy lifting of putting together the rundown every single week. We couldn't do the show without y'all, for real, for real. So I am grateful for all of you. For everybody out there, it is championship week. Best of luck to you in your championships. Bring home that hardware. Enjoy the weekend, everybody. That'll do it for this edition of the Stardom Cinem Show. For Michael F. Floyo, for Laquan Jones, I am Marcus Grant. We appreciate you checking us out. Best of luck this weekend. Happy New Year, all y'all. And we'll talk to you again next season.